Hey everyone, welcome to Mystifying Miracles. I'm Kristen, and today the story is about how grief turns to peace after a powerful encounter in a teenager's life. Being raised in Boston, Massachusetts, Tina Ewing says she grew up being very close to her father. His name was Paul. She says as she grew up from just little bitty, he would come home from work every day. He'd make time for her, sometimes spending several hours just playing and getting to know his daughter. Once Tina got into middle school, she loved playing soccer, and actually she was pretty great at it. She even made the advanced all-star team. So her father, Paul, would take her around, especially on the weekends, to all the tournaments they had, sometimes having to cross and travel road trips to different states. She always remembers her dad showering her with all these encouraging words before game time. He would just be that uplifting and supportive type of dad. And when she got to her sophomore year in high school, Tina finally gave up soccer. She was ready for something else. And Paul, he was very supportive. He told her how good she had played all those years and that was just fine. Maybe a change, trying something else would be good. Now, Tina's mom, she was an executive at a local bank. She worked long hours, so she wasn't able to go to all the games and grow up being as close like Paul was, because Paul was self-employed. He could take the time and work around his schedule to do all those things. Well, after soccer was done, Tina gets into playing basketball and volleyball. And of course, Dad was right there to cheer her on for every game. On the weekends, the two of them would go rollerblading, sailing, hiking, and many of those times would lead to long talks. Tina remembers one particular time where Paul sits her down. They had been out hiking or sailing, one of those things, and he tells her that, God has big plans for you. And he told her, you never ever in your life doubt how much God loves you. And if she could remember just that one thing, then everything else would eventually fall into place. Well, when Tina turned 18 years old, Paul began coughing and losing weight quite drastically, and it was 3 short months later where they got the dreaded diagnosis. He had lung cancer, and unfortunately, it had spread to his liver. 2 months after that, Paul's in the hospital, and he knows it's time, so he calls for his daughter to be at his bedside. She sits down next to the bed and he tells her, "Sweetheart, don't blame God for this." He tells her that God's calling him home and that her mother and he are both at peace with it. And for whatever reason, that this was part of God's plan. 2 weeks after that, Paul passes away. And Tina remembers being at the funeral and she's holding back tears. She holds it all in till she gets alone at home to where she finally just is able to just let it all out. For months after her dad was gone, Tina says a dark cloud was just over her head, over her whole life, really. There were times it would come and she didn't feel like she could go on. So she began skipping school classes. Her mom finally got her into counseling, but that just wasn't seeming to help much. Tina began to develop dark circles under her eyes because she just wasn't sleeping well. And she also began to lose weight because she just didn't feel like eating. Mom made sure to always make a point to tell Tina, though, that she was praying for her. She wanted her daughter to know that. And Tina's remembered it to this day. There would be times where Tina says she'd think upon it like, yeah, I know my mom prays for me, and she'd think about those prayers. And she says that she knew that it would have to be prayer, divine intervention, and God's miraculous power to help pull her out of this dark cloud, basically, and to have the want to go on. And she knew she should talk to God, but the question was for Tina, how? She didn't even know where to start, because in the back of her mind as well, she thought, After all, how do I talk to somebody who it's because he allowed my father to die, is how she thought of it. And she hated thinking like that. But it was a thought that she couldn't just help. It just popped up into her mind. Months pass on, and Tina still feels empty. She graduated high school, and she spent the summer after just kind of moping around the house. She didn't get out or do anything. She was just still in that funk. Autumn comes around, and that marks about the 1-year mark of her father's passing. So she and 2 friends, their names were Diane and Laura, they decide to take a hike around a lake. And that lake happened to be one of her father's favorites. Every step that Tina took reminded her of him. And she thought to herself, maybe this was a wrong idea. Maybe I shouldn't have come. But her friends nudged her on and said, no, this is good. You need to do this. It's time. For 30 minutes, the 3 girls walk in silence. And they came upon a spot that they pass, and Tina remembers she fell and sprained her ankle in that spot. She remembers walking with her dad as a young kid, and she could almost hear the caring tone that he had in his voice as they passed by it. And there were several moments like this that just stood out and reminded her of her dad. Well, they come to a hill, and way up at the top is a bench. And on that bench is where Tina and her dad sat many times when they took walks around this lake. It was there a lot of the deeper talks took place. You know, Tina says she was looking up at it, that big tall hill. And she said overwhelming grief just kind of took over. As she's feeling that, and she's in the midst of feeling that grief, she's still looking up at the top. And all of a sudden, she notices a man. He was wearing t-shirt and jeans. She said it was just so uncanny because the man, from at least her vantage point, he resembled her father. The 3 friends continue walking up the hill in silence, but Tina's got her focus. She's laser focused on this guy as she's walking up the hill. You know, she can't take her eyes off of him. And as they're getting closer and closer, Tina says the burden and overwhelming grief starts to lift. As she's nearing him and she gets about 10 yards away, she says the man gave her just a warm smile. Now, her friends, they continued walking. Tina briefly stopped. Her friends, she said, were oblivious. They didn't look at the man, talk to the man. It seemed as if they didn't even notice the man because they just kept on going. And when she got just a few feet away from the man, she's still laser focused. She's looking into the man's eyes. She says all he did was wink, turn around, and walk back the other direction towards the lake. He never said anything, but gosh, did he remind her of her dad. He looked just like him. When he smiled, winked, and turned, peace came over. All of a sudden, she said she just briefly returned the smile, and she also turned and walked the other way. Once she and her 2 friends got to the bottom of the hill, she pauses and stops, and she asks Laura and Diane, "Did you see him?" And they kind of look at her and they're like, "No." Him? What man? And they're looking at her all confused. And they kind of tell Tina, it was just us on the trail. There was not a single soul, no one else up there or on the trail that we saw. And Tina kind of is like, guys, seriously, come on now. He was up there at the top of the hill by the bench. The jeans, the t-shirt. And the more she continues to talk, the more crazy her 2 friends look at her. Like, she's feeling that now. And she's like, she just stops talking finally. And she kind of thought, yeah, they think I'm nuts. They clearly didn't see the guy. She says after she stopped talking, another wave of peace came over her. And she just finally tells her friends, never mind. I'm sure it was just my imagination. But whoever that guy had been, Tina says he gave her a glimpse of her dad, whom she missed so incredibly much. And as they walked on that day, Tina thought on it more and more, and she became convinced it had to have been an angel. Fast forward 5 years from that point, and Tina is working in LA near the Federal Building downtown. And she's on her way back from lunch. She's coming near a curb and she stops because she has to wait for the light change. And she said suddenly, she's just standing there minding her own business, something that felt like a forceful hand from her back or back shoulder grabbed her and forcefully pulled her away from the curb. She said that it was such a strong pull that she even almost lost her balance and fell to the ground. And it was then, in that instant, a city bus came, ran up the curb by accident, right where she had just been standing. So had that not occurred, Tina probably wouldn't be around today. Tina, tries to collect herself because she's like, whoa, I'm sure that gave her a little jostle there. So she wants to turn around to thank whoever pulled her back, saved her life, right? So she does, but no one's around. There's within 50 feet, all the way around her, she said no one was there or near her that could have been there to pull her back like that. And once more, this is 5 years later, remember, she feels that wave of peace come over her whole body. Nowadays, Tina loves sharing those experiences, what she learned, what she went through when she lost her father so young, and about the bus experience. She just lights up being able to tell people about her testimony. And she said she has never forgotten what God did for her so long ago when she was so devastated by her father's passing. She knows that God assigns angels to us to watch over us, and she knows that that has happened more than once in her life. Just a beautiful story once more, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I hope you're having a blessed week. I'm going to see you next time.